All right. Good morning.
Morning. Welcome
Morning.
back.
It is morning here.
It is morning. It's actually really
Hi.
early. Our kids aren't even awake, and it's a snow day again today. We've
Yeah.
had 3 this week.
Yeah, and it's barely snowing.
Go me. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
fine.
welcome back to our podcast.
So,
Christine and Jesse, of course.
oh, sorry. I didn't realize you weren't done with the intro. Okay. So, what did you learn this week?
Well, I'm just gonna throw a deep question on me right away, right off the
We
bat.
always do this question.
I'm just kidding. The thing that I learned this week would be how we project, like when we're in a situation and you see or hear something in somebody that you don't like, it's because you recognize that within yourself.
Mm.
And there's a whole deeper conversation that goes into that, but you see this person and you're like, man, I really don't like this person. There's something I really just don't like about this person's energy. But if you really reflect, like I start noticing after like coming across this idea is I do those things. So I can't recognize something in somebody else if I don't know that feeling or that thought.
So, what you don't like in someone else is actually what you judge yourself for.
Yeah.
Got it.
I don't know the whole, I'm not a professional on that, but that's the thing it came across this week and some stuff I was reading. And it was just really interesting because a lot of times, I can be pretty judgmental.
Mm.
Like the saying with my business partner and I is, when I go to heaven, I'm getting little wings because they talk a lot of crap,
That's what Alfred, that's what your business partner says to you?
Well, that's what I tell him.
Oh.
Say, Alfred, just so you know, when we get to heaven or when I finally get there, you're going to see me, but I'm going to have little wings. I'm pretty sure I get to heaven, I think, but
I'm going to have Maleficent wings. I'm going to have huge wings.
Huge wings.
Yes.
They're going to have no feathers on them, though.
Oh, that's so mean. No.
I'm just kidding.
They're going to be beautiful. I love Maleficent. If I was a Disney
They're
character,
going to be made out of Levi's.
I would be Maleficent. I would be a villain. Not many people could say that. Most girls are like, I want to be a princess. I want to be Maleficent. Anyways, we're on
But
top.
you want to be a princess, too. Okay, so As far as you, what is something that you learned this week?
Oh, thank you for asking the question back. Yeah, I always ask the question, but I never have an answer. No, I think the thing that I learned this week is that, well, we watched Martha last night, the documentary about Martha Stewart, which I don't feel like I've ever been like a huge fan or not fan. So, but I had some clients who were like, a couple of people, you have to watch it. And I was like, okay, fine. So we watched it as I worked last night and it was great. And it was very relatable. Like it's kind of freeing because I feel like I have had the belief in a lot of ways that like why are people so hard on me? Like there is so many times I can remember even from the time I was like very little where people were just very hard on me. So
the thing you learned this week is that people were hard on you?
No,
watching Martha Stewart?
I'm not done. Oh my God. I have to give a little more story, okay? Anyways, before I was interrupted. So people have been hard on me. Like I can remember things that have happened. Like no one else would get in trouble. Everyone was doing the same thing. I was always the one to take like the brunt of all of the problems and like the trouble. And so it was very relatable. But my lesson this week, which Martha reaffirmed, was just that it doesn't matter what people think. And the more energy we give what others think, the less we have control and power in our lives. And I think that's been a theme this week. There's been some people that it was election week. Everybody's been very grumpy and we have like both extremes, right? We have very grumpy people who are very upset and like people are really experiencing that in a very extreme way. And then we have people who are extremely excited on both sides. And so I think that just creates chaos, right? When you have two very extremes, I think in a lot of ways that creates a lot of chaos. And I am a very positive person. I don't actually see myself that way because I live in my head, but I think that I get that reflected to me. Like, I actually had a couple of people affirm me, and it's annoying that I'm so positive this week. And it kind of got me down. And I was like, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be so positive, or maybe I should spend more time expressing my fears or whatever. But if I don't give those things power, and I'm not talking about toxic positivity, I'm talking about truly being positive and shifting my mind and really trying to focus on what I appreciate. Ever since you challenged me a couple weeks ago, or that was on Saturday, it feels like a month ago. That was on Saturday. You challenged me to like focus on the positive, and I've really been doing that, focusing on what I'm grateful for. And then it like annoyed some people this week, and I started to get really down about it. And then I remembered, like, I don't give a shit. I don't actually care. I'm not going to give that energy, because if I lose, if I give someone else the power over how I feel about myself and how I'm trying to show up, then I lose my power. And nobody deserves the right to change how you feel or think about yourself unless you're like looking for feedback, right? And there are those times that I like to look for feedback. And I think too many times we give the wrong people too much power in our lives, and it doesn't serve us. So there's a couple lessons there, but I think just like know who you are, and then be confident in that. And I think that really, like watching Martha last night, she's had to do that a lot. Like she had some like extreme things happen. I think a lot of times I can feel like being a narcissist if we're not listening to the people around us. But there's only a few people who should get the access to your mind. So that's mine. But both of our points actually bring us in to our topic today, which is the art of arguing. And we have tried our very hardest to talk about this without arguing or getting into an argument. And it's actually been kind of challenging. So we are not talking on this topic because we're experts. Because, well, we might be experts at arguing. We know how to
say
pick
if you do anything for 10,000 hours, you become an expert. So I think we're pretty close.
We're probably close. 17 years. We're really good at picking arguments or disagreeing on things. But I think that our point here is that we're sharing what we're learning, and hopefully it helps our listeners. It's not saying that we are the experts unless it comes to arguing and hours argued. That we might be really good at. But my first question, because I like to ask questions, is, well, let me set it up first, actually. So when we think about arguing and when we think about conflict, I think one of the things that we collectively have helped us collectively has been to focus on ourselves. And when we argue, doesn't matter if it's with your spouse or anyone else, what happens is we try to fix the other person. And in pursuit of that, we're not taking ownership. And then the reality is we can't fix other people. We can only fix ourselves. We can't fix what we don't have control over, right? And so you have to just stop. And something that I know that has helped both of us has been not trying to fix the other person, but taking ownership of our side and thinking about what we can take, like what we can change versus trying to change the other person. Because to your points and what you learned this week, what you don't like in your spouse, you probably are shaming about yourself. So if you can just take ownership over what you're feeling and what you want, and not look to the other person to give you what probably you need to give yourself. Or sometimes it's a communication issue. You're not communicating what you want. And sometimes that person is just being a pain in the butt. Like, the reality is you can't change that. So all you can do is focus on what you can control and what you can change, and let the other person be responsible for themselves and choose to see the best in that person. And I think one of the best things through that's come from that is we have dedicated ourselves in the last year. I'll say the last year, probably hasn't been much before that, to just choosing to see the best in each other and then calling that out. I think when we're angry, so many times we'll affirm what's negative in the other person. So I'm like, you're being an a-hole. And you're like, yeah. And then you continue to be an a-hole versus coming alongside you and being like, hey, this is not in alignment with who you are. You're a kind person. You're amazing with our kids. You're extremely generous. Like when somebody is mad at you and they come alongside you and say those things, it's kind of hard to continue to be an asshole. Right?
Right. And where's the question?
So, well, I just want to set it up with like the premise.
I mean,
like
you're giving them all the answers.
No, but that's like our together. Like,
yeah.
So that's where like, that is kind of our foundation for arguing is we take ownership. And then the last year, we really tried to call the best out in each other versus affirming the negative. So when you have that foundation, I think that's like the start for us. That's been the starting point. But in the pursuit of that, one of the things that we've done that I think has worked really well is we've both chose something we're currently working on within our relationship when arguments come up, because the point is not to not argue. I think a lot of times we're like, we're not going to argue. Well, you are, and you probably should be arguing. Because if you're not, you're either shoving everything under the rug and not addressing things, and don't be the peacemaker about it. It's not worth it. It doesn't actually resolve anything. Or you're just complacent and not like, you're not like actually sharpening each other. The point is to keep it sharp. I'm just kidding.
Wink, wink.
So if you want to really sharpen each other, you have to like really look at these like arguing as it's a beneficial piece of your relationship versus making it wrong. So what's helped us is just choosing to take that ownership and then calling the best out in each other. But within that, we've both chose to work on something personally. And that's like our goal within communication within our relationship. And so I want to talk about what has been your goal, and we share it with each other, right? Like we talk about these things and what our goal is so we can, again, like keep each other accountable from a place of like, oh, I thought, not from like a place of, oh, I thought you were going to be better about this, right? Because that's not actually taking ownership over ourselves, but like affirming each other. I think something you've done a really great job is when you see that I've done the thing I'm working on, you affirm that. You're like, wow, like I see that change. And that's been super helpful. So, and I'm talking about our arguments, like they just go so well. They don't. They go awful and they are chaotic. And I am an angry person. And you get angry. We both drive a little bit from anger here and there. You kind of shut down. You're more the shutter down. And then we had like a public fight, an argument on Friday in public, like in the middle of downtown Denver. It was awful. I'll say it was embarrassing. So we won't go back
so
there.
Embarrassing. That falls into the thing that I'm working on.
Okay. All right. So what are you working on? Let's hear what you're working on and then how that's helped you.
So basically what she's saying, she said all that to say, basically, we're going to fight. As couples, if you don't have conflict, you don't have resolution. There's nothing to resolve if you don't have anything. Like the sunshine doesn't feel so good if there's no rain, right? Like there's no yin and there's no yang. There's no balance if there's no chaos. Like I don't know if that's from the book The Art of War or something, but there is there is no balance. There's nothing to balance if you don't know what is teetering on each side. So what she's saying is like, we're going to argue, we're going to have conflict, and we're not always good at it, but we choose to take action. And by taking action, what we mean is, we'll come up with a thing where it's like, okay, so this week we're going to work on something. What is the one thing? And we don't have to tell each other, because then it becomes like a judgment thing. It's like, hey, I noticed you're not working on that thing you said you were going to work on. It's more of like, what is the one thing you're going to work on this week? And then we go our separate ways, and that's just the one thing we're going to work on. you know, it's not, we don't really need to be held accountable to each other because it turns more into judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. This week's, I guess, theme for me was because of our huge fight last Friday.
Our embarrassing fight.
We went to a conference and Christine was acting like a 5-year-old. She was huffing and puffing because she didn't, hey, let me speak, give me the room. I have the mic. She was not having a good time. And instead of just sitting there like a grown-up, she was huffing and puffing and super upset. And finally, when it was over, we're walking downtown and she was just yelling at me how terrible it was and how stupid it was. And I just stood quiet. And then when we finally talked about it, I told her she was embarrassing.
That's why
and it almost ended our marriage.
It did not.
It did. And then I was like, all right. And I babied her for a little bit, apologized, all the things, whatever. Took her to tacos. She still wasn't happy.
No, I walked out and you were mad.
She walked out and then I got pissed off because I felt abandoned. Anyway, the thing that I am trying to work on this week is just having harsh words. Because
like you want to have harsh words?
No. Well, I do. Innately, I do. Like internally, I want to light this fire, like the kids show or the cartoon Inside Out. Right? I'm like fire. Like I get so angry and I just want to lash out. But the super conscious side of me has to be an adult. The whole idea behind like our conflicts in our marriage is like. I look at it like a cone, okay? Like we're here, our fights are here, and the longer we take to come back together, the harder it is to create balance, like in our fights and in our conversations. So usually, even if, you're not going to resolve everything right away, like an apology needs to happen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to happen if you don't say harsh words, right? For me, it's like, if I say something to hurt your feelings, I have to be like, damn it. Like, I don't think sometimes. Like, I just react. Like you were saying that night we were fighting, you were saying some things, and you're like, is there anything you like about me? And I was just kind of done with getting yelled at. So I was like, you know what? There's nothing I like about you. And you held onto that really deeply for like the next hour. And I was just trying to strategically find my way around. How do I get out of this,
And you didn't.
I didn't.
We continued to fight till the next morning.
But I mean, sometimes those fights used in the past, old-fashioned talk used to be, a week long.
Yeah.
But I think just some things that we've used the tools of conversation. Yeah. We find ways to come back together sooner. And the whole thing about fighting is this is stupid. And tomorrow morning we're going to wake up and be all over each other again. So how do we get back there?
Yeah.
So for me, the thing that I'm working on really, really hard is trying to guard my words. Like I say this all the time, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And my heart doesn't feel all those things about you, but sometimes I'll say something and it's like, it's kind of like a skirt. Like you have to hit the brakes and be like, wait a minute. Because for you, when you say something harsh, it's not that you didn't mean that internally. You just said it, but you can't take it back.
I think in the moment, though, you do mean it. I don't think
you mean it. I think no. I think it's like a sword fight. You yield your sword, and I draw my sword. And I forgot. Jordan Peterson says something really cool. I don't know what he said. I'll have to look it up and maybe post it in the description. But he said the strongest men are capable of using their sword, but they keep it sheathed.
Oh,
I forgot.
You're just full of mic drop moments this morning.
It's just one.
We've had a few.
Anyway, but that saying kind of goes in parallel with trying to keep your words right, because I'm not a dumb person. I know that these things are going to cause more conflict, yet you still do them. It's like the definition of insanity. You're going to do this thing knowing it's going to create chaos. Mm-hmm. But when somebody hurts you, you not being strong enough, quote unquote, you draw your sword instead of keeping it sheathed. Because in reality, the conflict will be resolved a lot sooner had you just, like me, I always just say, just shut the F up. Hernandez, like, just shut your ass up. It's what I say, like, you know what would have resolved this? If I would have just shut the hell up. If I would not have said anything, and you're like, I don't want you to shut the hell up.
I don't. Wow. I know
Am I not right though? Like, I'm serious.
I don't think I think it's okay. So this is something I like this conversation because it's probably going to help us, like real talk, to help us in our communication skills within arguing. Like, I think that anytime, this is actually okay. I'm going to go into mine because this is actually what I'm working on.
Okay, well, you should talk about yours because you don't need to judge mine.
I'm not judging. I'm not judging yours actually at all. I'm just saying that I think. Well, I'll go into. So mine.
Finish that thought, and then we'll go into yours.
Okay, so I think anytime we go to the edges of the pendulums, it's funny because I'm a very visual thinker. And so I get these visions anytime we're talking about stuff like this, and I just see these pendulums. And anytime we're on the sides of the pendulum, when we swing back and forth. So
can you spell pendulum?
That's so mean. No.
I'm just kidding. I just thought about that. I'm like, biatch, you can't even spell pendulum. Can't be using words you can't spell.
Then I wouldn't use any words.
I'm just kidding.
I could misspell the word
sorry.
the. That was
see how
mean.
fast we came back into balance? That's great. We're doing good.
That's so mean.
Suspect can't spell pendulum.
I can't with you. That was so...
Sorry.
Oh my God.
Squirrel.
I can't.
Focus.
Anyways, that's the meanest thing you've ever done. Okay. Back. Anytime we go onto the side of pendulums that I can't spell, anytime we swing like into those sides, it doesn't get us the result we want. What we want is never on the sides of the pendulum. It's always in the middle. And so what you're saying is, and why I'm like, I don't think like the problem isn't you speaking. The problem is what you're speaking and how you're speaking it. So like on one side of the pendulum, there's mean words. And then on the other side of the pendulum, there's no words. Mm-hmm. Neither of those things get us to where we want to be or actually bring, what did you say? Like, what did you say? Without conflict, there is no resolution.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love that. So I think that there's no resolution on the sides of the pendulum. And so we have to look at that and we have to go, okay, what is in the middle? If it's not mean words and it's also not no words, then what is the middle of the pendulum that breathes health and actually allows us to get the result we want within arguing and within conflict? Because again, like, the pendulum is not that like there's extreme chaos in arguing and like hurtful things, and not arguing is also not the option. So what's in the middle? Like that's always where I look when I'm like, okay, this thing way over here is not getting me what I want. And then what typically happens is we swing to the other side and then all of a sudden we still don't get what we want. And so I think to that point, and that's what I'm working on, is not living on the sides of the pendulum. What I'm working on is not going to extremes. Like I live in extremes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thing you love and hate about me the most.
I do.
I live in extremes. Everything I do is from extreme. Like I am the little fireball on Inside Out. Like
well, you're kind of all of them.
I'm all of them. I'm extreme. I want everything to be on fire all of the time. Like passion is my middle name. Like I don't want to live in the status quo. I don't want things to be lukewarm or mediocre. If we're going to do them, we're going to do them to the fullest of our ability. And arguing, we're going to do it to the fullest ability.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, we all bring our own baggage. And in my household growing up, I didn't get heard unless I lived extreme. Like there was so much noise, so much chaos. My dad was very distracted. My mom was very abusive. And like like you were not heard unless you were the loudest one. And unless there was like an extreme there. And so I have had to really work on going, I don't like that doesn't serve me. Whether that's how I was raised or not, like it actually doesn't matter because the goal has to be something different that's going to get me a different result that actually gives me the ability to continue and sustain that result because the extremes don't matter. And I've done the loud and I've done the completely disconnected because I swing between those two things. I'm like, I'm going to be loud and extreme and stand for what I want. And then when that doesn't work, I just swing to the other side of the pendulum and then I just completely push you away. And that's where I'm like, I'm leaving, I'm done. And like the D word has gotten thrown around. And like, that is another rule that has really helped. And man, there's moments that it's not easy.
What's
like
the rule?
We do not use the D word.
Yeah.
The only D word that we use is the dirty D word.
Yeah. What is the dirty D word?
We're not going to talk about it. Like, give me the D,
Like,
not
give me the D?
but not I want a D.
Oh, you don't want the D?
No, I want the D, but not, the bad one. Divorce. That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah. Not the bad D. Yeah. That is definitely.
That is like something that has been really beneficial for us is just taking that out of our vocabulary and out of our minds. Like, I think literally recently, probably within the last year to 2 years, I have been working on doing that and it has been really hard. And if you've already had a divorce, once you have already done that, it becomes easier, I think. And like, also, if you're an enthusiast, if you know the Enneagram and you're an enthusiast, that's my second number. And my life's work is resisting the urge to flee. And so the second shit gets hard, I just want to get myself the hell out of there. I feel very trapped. And like, you're a loyalist. So you like, when things get hard, you cling and you like try to hold on to things and keep them the same way. And I'm like, something needs to change. I feel stuck. And then you're like holding on to me. And that makes me feel more trapped. And that's why I think it's so important that we take ownership over ourselves. Because if I take ownership, I'm like, okay, I need to resist the urge to flee. I need to like actually not swing to extremes. And I think that really does have to start in our minds and in our hearts, because if it doesn't, then we're going to speak from that place. And it's really easy in that fight on Friday. I was in my head and I communicated it. I was super vulnerable, which I was proud of. And it actually did help because I didn't speak to you from that place. I shared what I was going through. And I think like in my head, I'm like, I am going to extremes. Like I want to burn everything down right now. I am feeling so overwhelmed. Instead of saying, whatever I'd say, like, I can't think of what I was like. I don't want to be with you. I'm like over this. I'm done. All of the things that like I was feeling. And then in that moment, especially like Saturday morning, I was just like, I'm going to choose to focus on the things that I love about this man. Because all of the things I'm telling myself are not necessarily, they're not the only truth. They might be true in this moment. I might feel these ways, but they're not the only truth. And I even told you, I'm like, because you called me embarrassing, which I was being embarrassing. But I took that very hard. It really hurt my feelings. And then I was like, that's how you really feel about me. And then I went to an extreme. I'm like, this is how he feels about me. I'm never going anywhere with him again. In my mind, I was like, I'm never leaving the house with him again. He can just go everywhere by himself. I was being such a baby about it. And then I was like, I even told you, I am going to choose to look at all of the ways that you have showed up and not like treat me like you're embarrassed of me and all the things that you've done in the last 17 years. I'm going to hold on to those things instead of the words here. Like I'm going to take all of the other information that I have in my mind of the ways that you have like really put me like on display. I don't know how to like say it, but you're really good at that. Like, I feel like you're very proud of who I am. And like doing the podcast, right? Like, if you were embarrassed of me, I don't think you'd want to put something like this out there because it is really challenging. But I think in a lot of ways, I've had to like really hold on in those moments where I'm like, he thinks I'm embarrassing or something hurtful is said. We just focus on that. And then all of a sudden, everything extreme comes from that place. And I'm just not doing that anymore. That's my goal. So
that's a good goal. And I think one of the strategies we use, obviously, we use the Enneagram. That helped us back in 2017
it helped
when
us.
things were hard. You know, we thought we were so much different because we are, but then we realized through the Enneagram, you know, there are tools like that, you know, there are things that because of our differences that pull us together or that attract us. And another one is like our love languages.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's like a good tool for anybody. If you don't know your love language, there's a quick test you could take that will kind of tell you, give you briefly. Like you might be giving your spouse gifts and they might be words of affirmation. And gifts are great. Everybody likes to get something, you know, it makes them feel thought about. But if your love language is words of affirmation and you don't tell them, you know, hey, you look beautiful, or hi, you look handsome, or I like that shirt, that looks really good on you, things like that, then you're really not feeding into the things that are serving them.
Well, and you're spending a lot of energy on the wrong things.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about this while we were talking. It's like, it's crazy because, you know, when relationships fail, it's because people fail to work on it.
Mm.
You know, things fail because you fail to work on it. And like, you know, you hear something on social media or something or on the news and you're quick to go research that. But when your spouse is struggling with something, you don't go research how to get closer or draw closer to this person. And then we wonder why our relationships fails because we're not figuring out, like, you know, doing research on, you know, my spouse. Like what we do is when we go out to eat or we go on a date night, you know, we ask a ton of questions.
Mm-hmm.
We've even utilized these little cards that we bought, from one at the airport, one, I don't remember, somewhere else, but excuse me. But we ask questions, and that constantly like stimulates and it keeps us growing because I learn new things about you all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, especially after 17 years, a lot of times people just get comfortable. Like, I know her, you know, she likes flowers, she likes this, she likes that. Like, well, the type of flower she likes now might be different than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Her favorite color might be different. Like, I mean, your outfits change, like your style changes every 5 years or something, you know, like the wardrobe in your closet, you might love these clothes and then in 5 years, like, just things change, like your DNA change, your taste buds change, things that you know, we're getting older and wiser, I think, but but yeah, I think we just fail to work on the relationship that way. But I think those are some key things. That's kind of where I was getting.
That's really good.
The love language, and like, you know, what is the average person spends like 2 hours a day on TV or something like that? Like, you know,
Probably
take
more.
15 minutes, even if it's 2 hours a day, like spend an hour a week researching your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend, like something. Like, if you spend that much time, if you spend 10 minutes a day just asking them questions about stuff that they like, I promise you the next date night is going to be a different experience.
Yeah, that, I think the desire or the standard to stay curious is really, like, both of us are very curious people. You're probably better at it than I am. You're really good. You know, I'm very curious, but you put it into action. I would say be curious and then take action on the things you're learning, because you're really good at that. And I think that's such a great point about just taking that time to understand and stay curious, understand your spouse at a different level. I think the challenge with that is so many people, like, we just focus on the problem. right? Like we're just so obsessed with the blame and the problem. And we take that anger and we're like, screw this person. I'm mad at them. I'm not doing anything with them. I'm blah, blah, blah. But like the reality is that's not going to help. And I think in a lot of ways that has been a very big game changer for us, is choosing, like, the world is not going to get better with more anger. Nobody looks at the world and we're like, I wish people would just be more angry. But in our marriages, we hold on to the anger and we meet anger with anger. We meet blame with blame instead of meeting those things with curiosity and being curious about, like, okay, well, hurt people hurt people. So I'm going to stop the hurt. I'm going to not take these things on as my truth. He thinks I'm embarrassing. That is not the truth. Most of the time, I can be embarrassing. But like choosing to have our own reality and then allowing that person to be in their stuff. I think grace is true grace, not like, well, I was just being nice grace. Like truly going, this person is amazing. I'm going to give them grace because they're having a bad day. I'm going to like not take the things with weight that they're saying right now because they're definitely not in the best place. This is not the best of them. And I think that then spending time on researching it, I think that's an understanding. That's such a great point. And yeah, there's a lot of tools we've used.
Yeah, I think we hyper focus on things that we cannot control when we should just be focusing solely on the things that we can control. Like I can't control your emotions, but I can control how I show up. You know, and if I control how I show up, it's going to drastically change how you react to that situation.
Yeah.
It's like if anybody's in sales, you don't go in here being a complete ass to the people. Like, you know, you show up really well for your clients, but you can't do that for your spouse or your kids or your family. Like, you don't have to fake it to sell it to make money, but like, you know, your life wallet is on stake when you like choose to do the wrong things, or I don't know the verbiage, but wrong things, quote unquote. Just pick one, right? That's whatever you think would be the wrong thing to do. Like showing up, not your authentic self, but just showing up pissed off. It's like you choose to do that. Therefore, it kind of messes up the whole thing. I'm not making any sense.
No, well, like to choose, like same thing. If you choose to continue to do the things that aren't serving you.
Yeah.
And that is interesting. Think about how much time we spend on like going to college, leadership training, skills, learning new things at work, and then compare to how long we spend or how much time we spend on developing ourselves in our personal relationships. There's such a vast difference. And really the only time people, they're like, and the only thing people do is like, we're going to couples therapy. Like I literally I hear very few people saying, we're doing this course, we're doing this coaching, but in business, we have a strategy. And I think that's one of the biggest missed opportunities is in relationship. We just don't have a strategy and we don't work on it. And then if we do work on it, it's only because it's failing. Like, why is it that we don't want to get stronger in being a spouse? Like never, I honestly have thought even very little bit, like gosh, I can't talk today. A very little amount of time thinking about how I can develop myself in our relationship. It's honestly usually because there's a problem and we're just trying to fix it. But in our careers, we're like, I want a promotion. I'm going to develop these skills. It's such a missed opportunity.
Oh, for sure.
Because our marriage, it should be home base. I think
it's like if people treat their marriage like they do a career. Well, if I don't like this one, I can get a new one. You know, I think that's the way that our society is teaching us and brainwashing our children that like family is not forever anymore. So it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Anything that you choose, you can just change your mind at any given moment. It's like, no, it's not really what it's intended for. But like you said, we treat our careers like they're forever. This is my career. I'm going to do this for 50 years. Like you have to work on it to stay in that position for 50 years. Well, you still have to stay in a position to be a wife for 50 years or a husband or even a father at that matter. Like I know tons of people there's a couple men in my Bible study who are like 80-year-old men, and they talk about how their kids kind of have all branched away and they don't talk to them anymore. And it's like, so they don't really give me answers because they don't know, but I don't ever want that for our children. Like our daughter's gone right now, and she still calls us when she has a rough time, Mostly it's you because you guys have a little bit better relationship. You guys are a little closer, but she calls me and we have 2-hour conversations, just shooting the shit, which is great. Cause I mean, like I think we've done a pretty decent enough part or job to, with our kids to keep them close. I don't know where I'm going with that thought, but.
Well, I think it's the point of prioritizing relationship and choosing to pour time and energy. If you're not pouring any time and energy into anything, you're not going to get the results you want, right? If the only time you're showing up and communicating is in an argument, and that's the existence of your relationship, you don't have any true connection or curiosity that's going to be reflected in arguing. So
you could catch us here every Tuesday. So if you're interested in growing with us, laughing with us, feel free to rate us, share it with your friends, and comment.
And have a great week. Keep it sharp.